Really have a lot of things to thank them for, it's a very old tradition of mathematicians and nerds trying to think about ways to use math and logic to create really cool stuff. And things that we really value as being human, right? Like conversations. Conversations are always different depending on whom you talk to and at what time and at what place. And the fact that we can choose to tell certain people certain things and other people different things, that is something at the very core of being human, to selectively reveal yourself to other people. And the cypherpunks realized that we need this in cyberspace as well. Right? When we talk online, we also want to be very aware of whom we're talking to, and to make sure that people whom we don't want to tell something, that they don't have any chance of figuring out what it is that we're saying. Right? So the idea of encrypted communications, to write a message to someone that only that person can read and nobody else. That sounds like magic, and it's because it kind of is, but it's a quite old magic, right? For thousands of years, people have tried to write in ciphers to a greater or lesser extent. But in the 1970s, especially, we found some fundamental building blocks that make this encryption unbreakable. Right? A strong cryptography first came to light, and that was one of the first proof systems that we can really say is rigorous and that works and that is unbreakable. You can prove that you know a secret, a private key, but without telling anyone else that you have that private key. Right? Or what that private key is exactly. That is basically what a signature is about. When you can encrypt a message as well, right? Someone can send you an encrypted challenge message, and you can only decrypt it to get to the clear text if you have the private key. And those two things are super powerful. And we can build a lot of cool things with it. We can authenticate people all of a sudden now, right? And instead of providing a service where anyone can get access to your computer, we can say, no, only if you know a certain private key can you talk to my computer and use its compute resources. Those aspects are incredibly useful, right? And early authentication mechanisms on websites use these. But then we can even figure out some other cool tricks with cryptography, like blind signatures, which is basically proving that someone has seen a message before without knowing what the message actually was. That's a super cool trick to basically enable anonymous access rights to something, right? So that you know a person registered in the past, but you don't know exactly who that person is. That was then used for the first digital money, JAIME and eCash. Right? A way to use signatures and private keys to create a digital unit that can be passed along to people, and a unit can only be spent once. Right? So we've actually now created something in cyberspace that is limited, right? Where even the access to the good, the thing itself, is limited to only a person with a secret, but that can be anonymously transferred, so that other people have the access right to, for example, the digital money. And again, the crucial aspect here, we found out that we can build systems that are useful without revealing very sensitive information. In the sense of JAIME and eCash, when you redeem a digital coin, an eCash token, the mint, the service provider, has no idea from which deposit that came from. It could have been any of the users. You literally don't know. And that's awesome. Right? Because now we find a way to make digital transactions, but without revealing the transaction history, and that is great. And it comes with other numerous benefits, like enormous efficiency and speed and scale. Right? These eCash servers can satisfy millions, billions of customers quite easily because it's a super simple piece of software. And thanks to the building blocks, the foundational stones that are at its core, to build systems on top of that gets even easier. Right? But then with a big problem on the search for digital money, right? A good that is recognized by everyone and that everyone would love to get paid with. Right? We found that relying on a single trusted third party to create this digital good is not good. Right? The early versions of JAMINE eCash issued by a single entity, and if that single entity's server or computer goes down, the money system is gone. And therefore, we were looking for a decentralized base money system, something that eliminates a single point of failure, where we distribute the risk of operating this good to multiple people instead of just one. And finally, in 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto figured out how to do this, right? By having a database that records the chain of transactions, right, which are just signatures in the end. So a coin can only be moved when it was signed by the private key that was committed to at the beginning. Again, you need to prove secret knowledge in order to spend your Bitcoin. But then how do we keep track of which coin was spent first? We need to have a database of all the transactions that happened in the past. And anyone must be able to write to this database completely anonymously. Right? Because we simply cannot verify and authenticate everyone who would love to use the money system. Anyone should be able to. So the big problem though, as soon as you enable anonymous people to write to any database, you will have to deal with spam. People just spinning up thousands of clients and writing arbitrary stuff on your database. And very soon trying to read the entire database and reason about it and compute on top of it becomes very difficult. And therefore we need a rate limiting system that again must be completely anonymous and free and with open access to use. And Satoshi built on the ancient work of the cypherpunks with proof of work, the namesake of this conference, where you can prove that a certain amount of compute power and electricity and energy was sacrificed in order to come up with a small piece of data, where in and of itself, this tiny string is a proof of the energy consumed. And that utilizes a hash function. Yet another amazing building block of the cypherpunks, where we can digest an arbitrary large amount of data into a tiny piece of data that is a unique fingerprint thereof, with a complete random footprint. And that we can utilize to ensure that only those can write to our database who have performed a lot of work, and they need to prove that work in the sense of computation and electricity with the hash itself. And now we have an anonymous database that is rate limited with writing data to it, first and foremost, to ensure that it does not grow into complexity where verification of this proof becomes very difficult. And with Bitcoin, we also see that it's the person who creates the proofs and the person who verifies the proofs in these different crypto systems are fundamentally different. With JAMINE eCash, the person who creates the proof, right, is the mint, and the person who verifies the proof is the mint. And because we have this circular reference of the person who you're basically proving something to yourself, it's very small, it's very elegantly designed. But with Bitcoin, we want to have anyone being able to create the proof, and more importantly, everyone needs to verify that proof. If you want to use Bitcoin correctly with the lowest amount of counterparty risk, you need to run a Bitcoin full node and verify the chain of proofs that has been created by the people making transactions and those ordering the transactions into blocks. These are just some of the cool proof systems that we have seen up to date. But the cypherpunks have been extremely hard at work in the decade after Bitcoin was invented, where a huge advancement on signature schemes has been made. Right? A lot of new, interesting, cool insights was discovered by people working on Bitcoin, like, for example, the discrete log contract or adapter signatures. Right? A genius idea by someone to cram even more data into a signature, basically, make this little piece of data so useful as it could possibly be, with, for example, committing to other signatures. These protocols, another one would be music, the ability to have something that looks like a single public key, but in fact it's not protected by a single private key. It's an aggregation of multiple tens, maybe hundreds of private keys that come together to create this aggregated public key, and they can produce an aggregated signature. But it looks indistinguishable from a single signature. Right? So this is a very simple and elegant way to use Schnorr signatures, again a very simple and elegant math formula, but we have only really discovered this recently after a lot of people tried to improve the efficiency of Bitcoin as a network. There are many other numerous ways and improvements on the way in Bitcoin, and where we can use these proof systems. And they go into the quite crazy and magical, including various zero-knowledge proofs and such. Unfortunately, the time here is limited, so I will cut it off here for now. If you have any final questions, please grab a mic, and until then, thank you very much.
Okay, we can do one question. We are running short on time, but you, sir, in the light blue shirt, and I think there should be a mic. Someone is bringing you a mic that you can ask your question.
Hi, thanks, Max. Kind of got two questions here. One is that, well, first of all, observation, right? That it all comes back to these private act, which is what Zimmermann reminded of yesterday, right? So it really comes back from this fundamental observation of the individual. The question is how to distribute that in a trustless mechanism to make that decision permanent. In such systems, problem is the Sybils, right? That anyone can make an identity, anyone can overwhelm this rate-limited addition to this shared distributed cloud of previous probable statements and so forth. Any thoughts on how to tie that? And let me ask the second part, because I think it might be related. So it seems you said that you've implemented this stuff, right? And you've checked out the math, so you actually have started, you know this could work. So the question is, why doesn't that uptake just happen, right? Like, this is a class of ideas whose utility is increased by the ubiquity. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, because this is the way it should be done. It seems obvious in your scheme, and the scheme that was presented yesterday in Prime and stuff like that. How do you see the uptake happening in a world historical manner?
Yeah, to your first part about Sybil attacks, that's a huge downside of having anonymous systems, is that the evil guy can spin up thousands of evil identities and attack your system, and since it's perfectly anonymous, you cannot differentiate the malicious attacker from the honest participant of the system. So very often, the more anonymous we try to make these systems, the easier it becomes to attack them in terms of denial of service attacks or Sybil attacks. That is a problem. We actually experienced this with Wasabi Wallet, where we use advanced zero-knowledge magic and proof systems to provide a service. And with the version 2.0, we changed the fundamental cryptography, made it much more flexible, made it much more anonymous, right? So that we could build beautiful, more complex clients on top of that, but simultaneously we made it a lot easier to Sybil attack us, simply because it is a much more private system, and the way that we as a service provider can punish the evil attacker is even more limited than it was before. Right? So this is a fundamental problem, and that's why designing these anonymous systems is very, very difficult and not easy to do, and not easy to do by one person. Right? To figure out if these systems are truly secure, it requires a monumental effort from many researchers and contributors. So definitely very difficult. And then why don't we see much adoption of cypherpunk technologies? Well, I would argue, we see a shit ton of adoption, right? You use HTTPS multiple times every day, and that's cypherpunk as fuck, right? There we protect ourselves against man-in-the-middle attacks, where you want to get some information from a server that other people don't know what exactly you're talking about with that server, right? That's something widely deployed now, and why? Because it is fundamentally secure. secure, right? And even more important, it was efficient to build, it was easy, right? And it is a cheap and efficient protocol. We have enough compute power to just do it in the background under the hood. And then we see mass adoption. When the technologies are no longer something that you have to spend months on learning how they work and how to configure them and how to use them securely. That is where tinkerers and this a small niche plays with these systems, and where they build these systems. But in the long run, they will only be used if they are extremely easy to use without months of pre-cognitive work, when they are extremely fast to use because we all have stuff to do, and when they're extremely cheap, financially speaking. When all of these costs are very low, we can just make it the default in every software. And at that point, anyone who uses the software, which is many people, are going to have those benefits. This is again something we are trying to do at Wasabi, where especially with the second version, we removed a lot of complexity and cognitive load out of the user interface because we had better tools and better building blocks to automate a process that is cheap and fast. And then we can make it the default, and it will work. And anyone who uses Wasabi Wallet now is private by default on numerous layers, and now finally blockchain level as well. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Max. You did an excellent job of taking us from like the analog to the digital history of Cypher tools. And so if anyone else has any questions, you can catch Max out there. Thank you.